Those 4 matchups airing right here on the Big Ten Network. And all season long, there is going to be must-watch football airing here on the Big Ten Network, airing on Fox. And now I want to take a look at a couple of Big Ten matchups or games Big Ten teams are playing that you think are going to be must-see TV. What are they?
Okay, there's the obvious ones, Ohio State, Michigan.
Right.
I mean, you got to say Oregon versus Ohio State is a season-defining game. Oregon versus Michigan. Like, there's some game. I will start with one that is a little bit obvious, which is Michigan, Texas. But for a very specific reason. Michigan is a team that there's a fork in the road. They could be really special this year, or maybe it's a little bit of a, I don't think they'll be bad, but it may be a rebuilding year. What happens that game when we get to see whoever the quarterback is play against an elite team? If it looks uncertain, okay, that'll set our expectations. But what happens if Michigan is able to efficiently pass the ball down the field and combine that with a revamped running game with a defense that I believe will be one of the best in the country? That's a season-defining game. So it's also interesting, both programs, big brands, struggled for a while, now back on top. So that's number one. Number two, Colorado, Nebraska. Again, two programs kind of looking each other eye to eye where the expectations are high. There will be a winner and a loser in that game. There's going to be a mental challenge to the loser. You know, that's an early season game. Colorado's been calling themselves, they're everyone's Super Bowl. What happens if you lose that game? Nebraska, you're carrying the weight of the past half decade on your shoulders at this point. What happens if you lose that game? So that's another season defining game for both teams. And I'll wrap it up with this fun rivalry that we now get to include in the Big Ten umbrella, USC, UCLA. We have some great rivalries in our conference. Now we add that great crosstown rivalry. It's going to be fun to watch.
A battle for Southern California, and USC and UCLA are two teams I think have very interesting storylines going into the season. Some pressure on USC head coach Lincoln Riley to figure out what's going on with that defense and get them back to where expectations are at. And then for UCLA, you've got a first-year head coach in Deshaun Foster. Just curious, what are your expectations for those two programs?
Well, I expect USC to be significantly improved. Just the things I know with Lincoln Riley calling plays. Miller Moss is going to be an elite quarterback. The offense is going to put up 30 points a game. That defense was horrendous last year. Out of position, tackling, everything fundamental, not great. But they go and get UCLA's defensive coordinator, D'Anton Lynn. That they are going to be improved on that side of the ball. The schedule's a gauntlet. So yes, they'll be better, but it's all relative to the rest of the schedule. And I think for UCLA, you know, for Coach Foster, it was a scramble. This was a late hire. He builds his staff really late. He was able to keep some key pieces from transferring out, notably Garbers, their quarterback. It's still just, this is going to take some time, but I believe in him as a leader, and I'm excited to see. That's a game later in the season. Both teams will have a chance to establish themselves and lead into what will be a really fun rivalry game.
Well, that'll be a very fun rivalry game, and all three of your games you just mentioned, by the way, are coming up in September, so you mentioned it maybe takes some time to figure things out. Not a lot of time before you've got big, key, marquee matchups coming up here amongst Big Ten schools.